Honorable Minister for Education of Rwanda, Joseph Nsengimana, and other senior government officials, the President and CEO, Project Management Institute, Pierre Luman, Chief Growth Officer, Project Management Institute, Johan Henlin, the Managing Director, Project Management Institute for Sub-Saharan Africa, George Asamani, the Chair, Project Management Institute, Board of Directors, Ike Nwanko, and other board members that are joining us here today, the Head of Community for Sub-Saharan Africa, Mrs. Adiola Akode, esteemed members of the Project Management Institute, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I am absolutely delighted to be able to join you today for the Project Management Institute Global Summit Series, Africa. It is great that you are meeting in the beautiful city of Kigali, Rwanda. Now, Kigali is changing by the day with infrastructure projects and urban renewal turning the city into a tourist attraction. Rwanda shows the power of planning and execution in action. That is because of the visionary leadership of President Paul Kagame. Today, the National Basketball Association Africa, NBA Africa, hosts its league tournaments in the impressive global standard basketball stadium right there in Kigali. Oh, well, it has to be. That's because President Kagame is so tall and he likes basketball too. Yes, Africa is the place to be. Smart investors should pay attention to Africa. African countries represent 13 out of the 20 fastest growing economies in the world. The New York Times ran a big headline that the world is becoming more African, with 1 in 4 people in the world being African. To feed the world, think Africa. That is because 65% of the uncultivated arable land left in the world is right here in Africa. To support global energy transition, think Africa. That is because Africa has one of the largest renewable energy potentials in the whole world and vast reserves of critical minerals and rare earth vital for manufacturing computers, mobile phones, windmills, aerospace, electric vehicles, and battery energy storage systems. The African Continental Free Trade Area is worth $3.4 trillion. Africa, ladies and gentlemen, offers high rate of returns on investment. Don't believe me, believe the data. The United Nations Development Program recent Africa Insights Investment Report shows investing in Africa gives internal rates of returns of between 15 and 20%. How about confidence of investors? Don't believe me, believe the data. The African Capital Market Activity Report, released in April of 2024, shows that African fundraising more than doubled to $4 billion across 22 funds, even as global private capital fundraising fell by 19% year on year. But to unlock Africa's vast economic opportunities, we need projects. That is what the African Development Bank does, developing transformative projects across 24 African countries, financing governments and the private sector. The African Development Bank has great ambitions for Africa. Now, under my presidency, in the last 10 years, we successfully increased the capital of the bank from $93 billion in 2015 to $318 billion today. This firepower allows us to support countries to deliver impactful projects. Our high 5 priorities, and let me list them: light up and power Africa, feed Africa, industrialize Africa, integrate Africa, and improve the quality of life of the people of Africa, has impacted the lives of over 565 million people. 28 million people gaining access to electricity. 104 million people achieving food security. 121 million people benefiting from improved transport. 128 million people accessing better health services. 67 million people getting ICT access. And 63 million people receiving clean drinking water. 34 million people with improved sanitation. Just look at the scale. Now, while projects are the instruments that help deliver these results, what is most important is how the projects impact the lives of people. Those who develop and implement projects have all kinds of names for their projects. In some cases, in fact, in most cases, the acronyms they use are so difficult for the institutions themselves to pronounce or even remember. What is important for the beneficiary is how the project touches and changes their lives. I had one of such experiences from one of our projects in Kenya called the Last Mile Connectivity Project, which connects low-income households to the electricity grid, paving the way for them to be able to connect to the grid and allow them to pay off connection fees over time. So powerful was this project that it helped to increase the number of Kenyans connected to the grid from 2.4 million people to over 9.7 million people. During my visit to some of the project sites, I came to a village and was met by one of the beneficiaries, whose name is Grace. Now, my wife's name is Grace, so this is not my Grace, but we all need Grace anyway. When she was asked by the Minister of Energy of Kenya whether she knows that it was the African Development Bank that financed this project, she said, "No, I don't know the African Development Bank." When she was asked again, "Do you know the president of the African Development Bank?" and I was right behind her, she said, "No, I don't know the president of the African Development Bank." Then, with such joy on her face, she said, "All I know is that we once were in darkness, now we have light." Wow. I was excited. That statement she made said it all. Projects are to deliver joy to people. The African Development Bank's work is done via such projects all across Africa, bringing hope to communities, smiles to faces, and improved lives and livelihoods, creating hope and building a more prosperous future for people. Such was the case for the people of Gambia and Senegal when the African Development Bank financed the Senegambia Bridge, linking both countries, a dream that had eluded them since the 1960s. A trip between both countries, in the absence of a bridge over the river, could take days, literally. Now, all that changed when the African Development Bank provided $104 million, and let me say, it's all grants, to construct the iconic Senegambia Bridge. Now, the journey that used to take days is now done in 30 minutes. The African Development Bank has invested over $55 billion in infrastructure in the past 10 years under my presidency of the bank, ranging from energy, water and sanitation, to transport corridors, railways, seaports, digital technology in terms of submarine and terrestrial cables, seaports, and of course, airports. And talking of airports, just a few days ago, I was in Addis Ababa, where I signed a mandated lead arranger agreement with the Ethiopian government for the African Development Bank to raise $8 billion towards the $10 billion for the construction of its mega international airport. This airport will be the largest in Africa and one of the largest in the world, with capacity of 110 million passengers when completed in 4 years' time. The bank is also helping to mobilize $3.9 billion for the construction of the standard gauge railways that will link the minerals-rich areas of Tanzania to Burundi. Together, the African Development Bank and its partners have also mobilized $15.6 billion for the construction of the Lagos to Abidjan corridor, linking 5 countries. When completed, the coastal corridor will support over 70 million people and serve 75% of the regional trade in the entire West Africa region. It is expected to be the world's largest megapolis. Ladies and gentlemen, Africa has other projects that are world-class projects. Take, for example, the $20 billion Dangote refineries in Nigeria. Diola used to work there. It is the largest single-train oil refinery in the world and the 7th largest globally. Now, what's exciting for me is that the construction of that refinery was done by Nigerian engineers. Wow, a clear indication that Africa has the capacity to deliver global mega projects. Imagine the possibilities of these engineers and thousands more like them, combining their technical excellence with PMI certifications, embedding the best global practices in planning, execution, and risk management in the DNA of Africa's projects. The same can be said of the new Ouarzazate solar power station in Morocco that was co-financed by the African Development Bank, which is today the largest concentrated solar power plant in the whole world. Again, the project was developed by a Moroccan agency for solar energy, Massen, a further demonstration of the capacity in Africa to deliver global projects at scale. One of the largest projects on the continent right now also is the $20 billion liquefied natural gas project, supported as well by the African Development Bank and other partners, which when completed will make Mozambique a major exporter of liquefied natural gas. But despite our $55 billion investment as a bank in infrastructure projects, Africa still faces an annual infrastructure financing gap of $170 billion. Now, when money is scarce, efficiency in the delivery of projects is even more critical. That was the case for the emblematic Pokwase interchange in Accra, Ghana, where through efficient and cost-efficient design and execution, an interchange that was supposed to have 3 levels was expanded to 4 levels with the same cost. This iconic infrastructure sends a powerful signal that cost-efficient design, procurement, and delivery are critical for sustainable infrastructure. Now, given that most of the infrastructure for Africa are yet to be built, we believe this is an opportunity to build them green and assure resilience against climate change. And that is why the African Development Bank developed and launched what's called the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa, AGIR, to mobilize $10 billion to build green and climate-resilient infrastructure all across Africa, and it received great support from the G7 leaders. Several challenges exist for infrastructure projects, as we know, including lack of enough bankable projects, high cost of capital, which is sometimes 2 to 3 times more than those of other emerging markets, and of course, high risk perception. Now, It is common to hear, and I'm sure you've heard it, people say projects are riskier in Africa. This is not correct. Don't believe me, believe the data. Moody's Analytics comparative analysis of the loss rates on infrastructure over 14 years in all parts of the world tells a totally different story. That's because the loss rate in Africa was estimated at 1.9% compared to 6.6% in North America, over 10% in Latin America, over 12% in Eastern Europe, and 4.3% in Western Europe, and of course in Asia. There is therefore no justification for the very high cost of capital that Africa pays to access financing for building infrastructure on the continent. Nonetheless, to tackle the issues of risk, the African Development Bank deploys risk mitigating instruments, including partial credit guarantees to address non-performance of governments in meeting their obligations to private investors. We have deployed over $3 billion of partial risk guarantees across several countries, which have helped us to leverage over $5 billion from the private sector. To comprehensively address risks facing private sector in investing in Africa, the African Development Bank is planning to develop a new institution subject to board approval called Africa Risk Mitigating Agency. The agency will bring all the risk mitigation and credit enhancement instruments of the African Development Bank together under one entity. It will cover equity risk, environmental risk, refinancing risk, and of course the big issues around political risk. It is also critical to strengthen capacities for implementing projects, and that's what you guys do. That's also why the African Development Bank established the Operations Academy, where project staff at the bank are trained across the entire project cycle. This is complemented with certifications in project management. We also extend this, of course, to countries we support, strengthening country delivery systems with fiduciary clinics and building robust capacity for monitoring, evaluation, reporting, and of course, learning. Over the past decade of delivering projects across 54 countries, we have drawn lessons that matter, not just for Africa, but for the world. Rigorous project preparation is non-negotiable. Every hour invested in defining scope, assessing risks, aligning stakeholders can save several months, perhaps even years, in project implementation. Poor project preparation is clearly a broken promise to the people we serve, and so we can't afford it. Second, partnerships amplify impact. Our most transformative results come when public and private and multilateral partners align, demanding sophisticated coordination and clear accountability. Third, technology-enabled oversight delivers results. Real-time monitoring tools helps us to respond faster, allocate resources more effectively, and make evidence-based decisions. Now, let me also say another issue is the sustainability. It is non-negotiable. Environmental and social safeguards are embedded in every project we do because long-term impact depends on protecting people and, of course, the environment. Another issue, local ownership drives sustainability. When countries and communities lead, projects last. And that is why we embed community consultation and participation into every stage of project delivery. Also, adaptive management is essential. In a complex, fast-changing development landscape, agility is key, while maintaining focus on the outcomes that matter. Now, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, these lessons lead to a clear conclusion. Africa, and indeed the world, needs more skilled and certified project managers who can combine local insight with global standards. This is where the African Development Bank and the Project Management Institute can together change the game, building a pipeline of talent capable of delivering transformative projects at scale for generations to come. Even though I'm at the end of my term, I see extraordinary opportunities for the Project Management Institute and the African Development Bank to forge a strategic alliance that raises global standards in project delivery. Now, this is not about isolated capacity building initiatives, but about combining PMI's global expertise with African Development Bank's proven track record in delivering complex, multi-stakeholder projects in challenging environments. Together, we can establish new standards for complex development project management that address climate resilience, economic inclusion, and social transformation simultaneously. We can also create learning partnerships that combine PMI's global methodologies with the African Development Bank's experience in managing multi-stakeholder, cross-border initiatives in challenging environments. We can also build next-generation capacity that positions African project management professionals among the world's most capable, while expanding PMI's global reach and impact. We can also together pioneer innovation in digital project management tools, real-time monitoring systems, and stakeholder engagement platforms designed for complex development contexts. Ladies and gentlemen, Africa is brimming with opportunities. They all require the capacity to develop and to execute projects at scale to achieve the transformation of the continent. The projects being planned today will define Africa's trajectory for the next 50 years. The question is not whether we will build, but whether we will build with excellence, delivering transformation that lasts. So together, let us commit today to the following: to prepare projects with the rigor they deserve, applying PMI's proven methodologies; to execute with unwavering excellence, guided by professional standards and certification; to measure not just outputs, but real lasting outcomes that improve lives; to deliver projects that change lives, not just statistics; to build local capacity that meets global standards through systematic training and certification; to make project management excellence Africa's comparative and competitive advantage in the global market. My dear friends, through our partnership, we will not simply manage projects, we will build Africa's future with purpose and excellence. Now, the spirit of global excellence is our trademark at the African Development Bank. The African Development Bank was ranked as the best multilateral financial institution in the world The African Development Bank, for the past 2 consecutive years, was ranked as the most transparent financial institution in the world. That is what we should do together. The African Development Bank and the Project Management Institute, making excellence in project management across Africa the gold standard. Together, let's make it happen. Thank you very much.